I just had to put a sentence on there. I'm so overwhelmed and don't really know what to write here. And for some reason, she was inspired by that. I was like, wow, she's such an inspiration to me, and I can be an inspiration for her. And that was really mind-blowing.
You are about to listen to part of a series where every month a leader from our community shares with us a little about themselves, how they came to find out about the ACL Global Project, as well as what drives them to do the work that they do, and perhaps even a bit about their hopes and dreams. This is the ACL Member Spotlight series, and in today's episode we are featuring Mathias Funke.
My name is Mathias Funke. I'm in Berlin, Germany, and I'm a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist. Also, a part of that was putting me in touch with that courageous step for me to do workshops and to leave my comfort zone to try and do this and try and do a bit of teaching. So that's what I do here in Berlin and have been doing it for quite a few years. Some days I work at home and have video sessions, which I really enjoy. And then the other days I use my bike to get to my office, which is a 15-minute bike ride. And then I have clients there in my office, which I really like. During lunch break, I often do a bit of yoga in my office. And then I get back home. I spend time with my daughter, with friends or partners, and I live in a part of Berlin that I really like. It's very lively and it's just a lot going on here. And I just love basically leaving the house and walking the streets here. It feels really nice. After studying psychology in Germany, I had to choose between either doing some kind of psychodynamic training or CBT training, and I chose CBT training, which kind of seemed like the lesser evil for me, just because I had to choose one. And I didn't really feel passionate about it. I liked being a therapist, but I didn't really like this approach very much. And then I discovered ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, maybe 12 years ago. And then, just the way it is, you go to ACT conferences, ACBS conferences, and I had my first FAB workshop, which I remember to this day, with Aisling Curtin from Ireland, and everybody cried. I was like, wow, this is interesting. A bunch of therapists crying in a room and connecting in this very loving way. This was also the first time I heard about Mavis. I was like, this must be an amazing person. It's making people cry even when she's not there. In one of the FAB workshops that I did, I think in 2016, again with Aisling, this was so inspiring because she let me know that she was inspired by me. And I was feeling very insecure during an exercise where we had to write something on a piece of paper and then put it in front of us, like one of the classic exercises. And I was so overwhelmed, and I just had to put a sentence on there. I'm so overwhelmed and don't really know what to write here. For some reason, she was inspired by that. I was like, wow, she's such an inspiration to me, and I can be an inspiration for her. And that was really mind-blowing. And at the end of the workshop, she was like, yeah, Mavis asked around. She's starting these awareness, courage, and love meetups now in Seattle, and she's asking would anybody in Berlin want to start a group there. And two hands went right up, my hand and Ralf Steinkoff's hand, and we didn't know what we were getting into, but we had an intuition, I think, that we needed to be on this path. And we just both at the same time jumped into this cold water in this moment, and it was the beginning of a beautiful journey. A huge part of what I've been looking for in ACBS is community, and this is probably the most loving community I've ever encountered. It became very clear in ACBS, but even more clear in the FAB and ACL communities, that I really feel at home there in these communities inspire me and encourage me to be my authentic self. And then eventually I realized in one of my later FAB workshop, oh, wait a minute, I can also inspire others. I can inspire people who really inspire me, and it goes back and forth. And I can't only be a passive recipient of that magic. I recently noticed that I'm in a way less ambitious, I think, than many of the people I know. And I'm okay with being an okay therapist for most people, because I know that for some people I'm probably an amazing therapist, but for many people I'm probably, someone who's good enough and helps them, but they're not overly enthusiastic about me. And that's really fine. I try to be balanced between being too ambitious and being too lazy in a way. So I definitely have this inner voice that tells me, like, encourages me to improve and to learn and to get out of my comfort zone. But also, the older I get, this gentle voice that says, it's okay, you don't have to be like the best therapist. And what is that even? How would that be measured? For me, success in my job is being an okay therapist who's improving the world maybe a little bit through his work with his clients, and being very aware that I want to be a good model for them. Because with almost all of my clients, I'm working on some version of self-acceptance, self-care, self-compassion. And I would hate to be the kind of therapist who's like overworked and close to burnout and then telling their clients to take care of themselves. That's not very convincing. I'm actually very passionate about intimate relationships. I do think that there are certain myths in our societies that are not necessarily helpful, that relationships or intimate relationships can only function a certain way. And I live quite differently in my relationships, and that's a big part of my life. I don't certainly want everybody to live the way I do, but I want people to be free and to reflect on what kind of relationships do I want and what are intimate relationships for me. Maybe it's an amazing friendship that I have, and people don't really see that as an intimate relationship because, oh, this is not your life partner. This doesn't count. I do think it counts, and I do think an intimate relationship can be with anybody, and it can be with one friend, it can be with several intimate partners. And I was encouraged by ACL to not hold back and to go all in terms of relationships in a way, even when it's just for an ACL meeting, even when it's just for a breakout room. So this is, I think, what I would like to say about my life on my deathbed, that I was able to create loving connections and had a lot of love in my life, was able to give a lot of love in my life, and created some ripple effects as well. When I went to Bob's Zoom memorial service, it was such an amazing experience, with people from all over the world being there, even in this terrible COVID time, where people weren't allowed to be there. I think even Mavis wasn't allowed to be there. She was on Zoom, and it was really crazy. But you could see in this family, I think their minds were really blown. Like, this is the amount of people whose lives are dead or are relative touched. And obviously those footsteps are way too big, but it's not about that. It's about the inspiration that really touching people's lives, maybe in just tiny ways, but for the better. Because I also feel quite privileged, and I feel like I'm giving a lot because I feel like I've also received a lot. I'd just like to say that I'm incredibly happy to be a part of this community, and it has really changed my life in so many ways, and it's become a part of my life. So I guess some of the ways in which it changed me are not even visible anymore for me because it's just so much a part of me now. But I just know how important this has been on my journey, and I will be eternally grateful for that.
That was Mathias Funke, and this is the ACL Member Spotlight series, where every month we feature another one of our outstanding leaders of the Awareness, Courage, and Love Global Project. Created, edited, and produced by Miko Cardenas.